Dishonored 2 mission A Crack in the Slab is a slice of time-travelling genius. In fact, it's so good, I'd go so far as to say that it's not only one of the best missions in the series, but one of the best missions in any game, full stop. And in this video, I'm going to do my best to try and explain exactly why it's such a showstopper. But first, to make sure we're all up to speed, here's a very quick rundown of events leading into A Crack in the Slab. Empress Emily Kaldwin sits upon the throne of Dunwall, aided by her father and protagonist of the first Dishonored, Corvo Attano. During a remembrance service for her mother, Emily is confronted by the witch Delilah Copperspoon, who claims to be the rightful heir to the throne. Depending on who you choose to play as, either Emily or Corvo is cast in stone, and the other just about manages to escape the confrontation alive. Having been given powers by the outsider, you're then aided by the mysterious Megan Foster and inventor extraordinaire Anton Sokolov as you begin working your way towards understanding the events leading up to Delilah's insurrection, one of those being how Delilah managed to return to the world having previously been cast out of it. It turns out a mining magnate by the name of Aramis Stilton went mad the night Delilah was resurrected, and so you head to his mansion to see what else you can find out. Now, before we go any further, it's important to remember a few of the lines spoken by Megan during this audiograph prior to the mission taking place, as they will be extremely important later on.
Stilton was a friend. Even as a mine owner, he was a good man who came up from working people and never forgot it. I went looking for him the night he disappeared, but the house was swarming with the Grand Guard. I showed them what I was worth, but it cost me. I'll live to see that score settled.
When Megan says it cost her, she's not being dramatic either, as she lost both an arm and an eye during the visit. And again, do keep that in mind also, as it too will become important once we progress a little further. After making your way through the Dust District, the rundown area surrounding Stilton's residence, you arrive at his mansion. Making your way inside, you'll find it in a state of disrepair and hear Aramis muttering to himself somewhere nearby. There's not much to do at this stage other than explore a few rooms of the mansion, and you'll no doubt soon begin to look for Stilton himself. Upon reaching Aramis, you'll be visited by the outsider, who gives you a very special timepiece. This timepiece can be activated at the press of a button, and you can use it to travel backwards and forwards between the present and the night Delilah returned 3 years ago. And you can also use its lens to view what's happening in the timeline you're not in whenever the need arises. And it's at this point that the fun really begins. Before you're properly let loose on the mansion with your newfound time-travelling powers, developer Arkane throws in a simple test to ensure you know how to use them. The door to exit the area is blocked in the present and locked in the past, which you might think leaves you in a bit of a pickle. However, by moving just past the doors in the present and then shifting to the past, you'll find yourself in the hallway outside, free to explore the rest of the mansion as you see fit. This rather easy puzzle may not seem like anything extraordinary, and it definitely isn't, but placing it near the beginning of the mansion is an essential part of subtly teaching you how this new mechanic works without you even realising you're being taught. From here, you're able to explore the rest of the past and the present as you see fit, but there is something else worth noting before we move too far forward, and that's that all the other powers you've accumulated during the rest of the game no longer work. In my view, this is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it really allows the time-travelling mechanic to shine during A Crack in the Slab. With no other powers to make use of, you're pushed towards working out how to tackle each and every area using time travel, which in turn ensures the mechanic is used to its fullest. If Arkane let you have your powers and the ability to time travel, there would be a huge risk that many players would simply move through the mission using a similar playstyle to that of previous levels, and so removing all other abilities allows the time travel mechanic to take centre stage and forces you to fundamentally change the way you played Dishonored 2. However, it is also a bad thing because it makes A Crack in the Slab far less enjoyable to replay than most other missions in the game. Sure, the impact of its time travel mechanic may still endure for another playthrough or two for some, but in terms of the number of gameplay options available to you, it is absolutely limited in comparison to the rest of the game. I'd personally argue that shouldn't be the first thing developers worry about when designing a single-player, story-driven experience. I think the majority of their choices should be centred around making a first playthrough impactful, but it is definitely worth taking note of nonetheless. If Dishonored 2 featured multiple levels which did similar to A Crack in the Slab, I would call it a mistake on Arkane's part, but I think having one mission which works this way is ultimately no problem in my book. The gameplay itself, while perhaps limited in some people's eyes, is still an absolute blast, especially on a first playthrough, as you continually shift between time zones to find the safest approach to any given situation. One area in the present may feature multiple bloodfly nests and nest keepers, but be much easier to navigate in the past. It's up to you to figure out which parts of the past and present are most dangerous, so you can then plot a safe route through the mansion using both. Personally, I also think using a less stealthy option is the most entertaining way of tackling this mission. It can take meticulous planning to get to its end without being detected, and the pace when doing so is definitely slower than most will have become accustomed to. Throwing caution to the wind, however, and using your newfound powers to kill everyone in sight is extremely entertaining, as you take down a guard in the past, reposition in the present, and kill another while he looks in the wrong direction. Despite having the option to be stealthy or chaotic, I'd guess the majority of players will gravitate towards stealth, but I'd really recommend going in all guns or swords blazing during a crack in the slab. The core gameplay loop is certainly different from the rest of the game and can still be incredibly engaging, but I wouldn't put navigating the mansion itself at the top of my list of highlights. What I find far more impressive is the various ways you can change things between timelines and the puzzles which task you with doing similar. There's no doubt the timepiece pushes you to adapt the way you play, but it also pushes you to adapt the way you think as well, which is brilliant. Here are all the little changes you can potentially make throughout the mission, which I want to highlight as I find it both very impressive how many there actually are, and how well Arkane has factored in the time travel mechanic across the entirety of the map. In this courtyard you can find a note which says the balcony above it is in danger of falling down and is being held up by supports. If you damage the supports in the past and then head back to the present, you'll find that a new path has presented itself, the balcony having seemingly fallen down sometime after your actions in the past made it unstable. Not too far away is Stilton's vault, and in the present a huge statue of the man blocks another route through the mansion. Moving to the past, however, you'll no doubt spot a note which says that the statue shouldn't be touched as it's heavy and unstable, and you'll also probably spot that the statue itself is hanging rather precariously from a wire. If you cut the wire, which causes the statue to fall and break, then the statue will no longer be stored in the vault in the present, thereby clearing the previously blocked pathway. Above the dining room hangs a set of chandeliers, and in the present, it looks like there may be a secret but inaccessible area above the third of them. At any other time, this would be a real problem, but not at this moment. All you need to do is head to the past, raise and lower the chandeliers as required to create a set of platforms, and hop all the way across. Upstairs in the past, you'll find two workmen repairing a window, along with a note which says that they were in great demand and that this was the only day they could fix it. And in the present, you'll find that the window was indeed repaired during that day. However, if you kill or incapacitate the workmen in the past, then you'll find in the present that they were never able to finish the job, and a new route has now appeared where the window once was. If you follow it, you'll find an otherwise inaccessible room, one which is packed with guards in the past, but also houses a treasure or two should you manage to clear them out. In the present, in the basement, an elevator sits motionless halfway between floors, and it too contains a hidden item. Even this is no issue. Simply head to the past, climb on top of the lift, and then shift to the present to collect your prize. While the 5 I've mentioned above are all really lovely examples of Arkane using the time travel mechanic to its fullest, the next 2 examples are perhaps my favourites. In another area on the first floor, you might notice a door which is locked in the past but is open enough in the present that you can spot a bloodfly nest, and heading into the next room, you may also soon realise that you can access that room by hiding under a desk in the past before shifting to the present and crawling through a hole. Inside the room in the present is the bloodfly nest you spotted earlier, sitting on top of the remains of a safe, with a furnace also located nearby, but in the past the nest is gone, replaced by a dead wolfhound with a note next to it, and the safe itself is also intact. The note says the dead hound was to be used in an art project, but the owner soon began to suspect that it was infected with bloodfly larvae, and so he left it for Jamie the housekeeper to clear up. The fact there is a bloodfly nest in the present means the man was indeed correct, but that doesn't help you a whole lot. Until of course you realise that if you burn the hound's body using the furnace in the past, there will be no bloodfly infestation in the present. You can then have a look at the combination on the front of the safe, which was used to open it, jump back to the past, and finally use the code before anyone else is able to get their hands on the safe's contents. It is wonderful stuff. My other favourite is this puzzle involving a flooded area in the mansion's basement. In the past, the room houses a bloodfly nest and a blocked door, whereas in the present, it is completely flooded. A note in the past speaks of a plan to wall up the area to contain the bloodflies, and also mentions that the drain stoppers need to be kept open in order to stop it flooding. Judging by the flooding in the present, that clearly didn't happen, which means you need to open them yourself in order to drain the room. However, you don't actually have the means to do so until you revisit the past where you'll find a crank. Throwing that crank into the area where the flooding is, you can then head back to the present, pick it up, use it to open the stoppers, and finally claim your reward in now much drier surroundings. Again, it's really lovely level design. Arkane could have conceivably simply included the time travel mechanic, but created a level which played out otherwise fairly normally, but making sure the areas you visit are so closely intertwined with the new mechanic itself really is the brilliant final flourish to the level. Except it actually isn't quite the brilliant final flourish. Once you've had some fun exploring the past and the present, you've cleared a few paths to help you explore more easily, and perhaps have also changed time once or twice here and there, it's time to actually find out what happened that day in the mansion. There are plans in the past to perform a secret ritual, the ritual which brought Delilah back from the dead, which will take place in Stilton's study. Unfortunately, the study is locked and you need a code to access it, which you'll soon find out is written in Stilton's notebook on or near his person. Eventually, you'll find Stilton in the gardens, and you may not realise it, but this is where you have to make a choice so important it will not only affect you, but will have huge repercussions for your friends and people you've never even met before as well. But we'll come back to that in a jiffy. For now, we'll grab Stilton's notebook without him realising and head back to the study where the ritual is taking place. Everything is in flux in the study, and it's clear something really bad is about to happen. Stilton even tries to dissuade those joining him for the ritual from taking part.
The more I hear, the more I think this is ill-advised. Who wants to speak with the dead? If this Delilah really was killed or banished from the world, what if she's lost her mind?
But go ahead, it does. Delilah returns, Stilton is driven mad, and now you better understand what happened, it's time to head back to Megan and Sokolov. As you leave the area, the outsider takes the timepiece back, and everything seems to be exactly as it was before you began exploring the mansion. And this is where we need to rewind time a little, back to when you were first in the gardens. I mentioned that there was a hugely important choice to be made here, and there is, but it's one I'd guess quite a few people may have missed. You see, taking the notebook without Stilton realising is one way of doing things, but there are actually two other options for you to choose from here as well. You can decide to first put him to sleep or choke him unconscious, and then take the notebook, at which point Emily will acknowledge that something has changed.
By rendering Stilton unconscious, I changed the past. But how?
Heading back to the study, you may not even realise quite how much has changed until you use the timepiece to head back to the present, where the once dilapidated mansion is now a beautiful residence. At first, you may not realise why, until you head to the study and hear participants taking part in the ritual talking about how Stilton hasn't shown up.
It's time to begin. Where's Stilton? I should never have kept him on just because he and my father were close.
The ritual still took place and Delilah still returns, but Stilton didn't attend it and so never lost his mind. And now that the past has been changed, he's been able to maintain the manor up until the present. There's even a new part of the mansion to be explored that it's very easy to miss. In the past, on the second floor, you could find a note talking about a new office which was due to be built for Stilton. If he attends the ritual, then the office is never built as the mansion falls into disrepair, but now that he's of sound mind in the present, it does. If you head to the second floor in this new present, the office will indeed have finished being built and now houses some treasure and an extra note or two. But the changes in this new and improved present also go way beyond simply a restored mansion and a new office. Heading back to the Dust District, the dust clouds which previously plagued the area are now gone for good, and the citizens living there are much happier people.
But Aramis Stilton is a good man.
I'll tell him you said that. He drinks at my brother's pub.
He knows we appreciate him. Karnaca has problems, but it could be a lot worse here in this district.
A union for the miners has even been created as well, in a building which was previously run down and empty, and Lucia Pastor, who could be found in the former present handing out food to starving workers, is now its manager. And still the changes continue. Remember Megan's audiograph at the beginning of the video? Well, because in this new present Stilton ended up being okay, Megan never had her run-in with the guards that day, which means she never lost her arm and eye, which are now back where they belong. Stilton himself now also joins you as you prepare for the next mission, and he even gives you a map featuring a hidden entrance to the Grand Palace you're planning to infiltrate. All in all, I think it's safe to say that based on what I've just mentioned, changing the past worked out pretty wonderfully. What I also love about this chain of events, what I'd call the good ending to the mission, is that it really fits the character of Stilton. Unlike the other villains you'll have encountered during Dishonored 2 who definitely deserved what was coming to them, Stilton is actually a rather nice bloke. Having worked his way up from the mines, he may be rich, but he's never really felt like he fit in with the other elites of society. During his ramblings at the start of the mission, he worries about it.
I've got to clean up. They'll all see I don't belong among the upper crust. The fine people.
And one of the guards later also recognises his desire to fit in.
Does Aramis Stilton actually play the harp or the piano?
Not that I ever heard.
What am I doing here then? Why hire a tuner for instruments no one ever plays?
If you ask me, Stilton thinks a harp or a piano is the kind of thing a man in his position should own.
You can find notes, including a miner's handbook and details of a new mask Stilton has been building to try and reduce worker illnesses, and in his new office in the altered present, it seems he had also been trying to set up a fund for injured miners. He may be surrounded by opulence, but Stilton is at his core a good man, and so changing the past so that he lives makes for a really satisfying story arc that turns Dishonored 2's established conventions on their head. In most missions, you're trying to stop bad people from doing evil deeds, but in A Crack in the Slab, you're able to save someone so he can continue to do good. In all honesty, I'd go so far as to say that it's one of the best story arcs in the entire series, and Dishonored is a franchise littered with wonderful little side stories such as Stilton's. There is also one final choice you can make in the past instead of leaving Stilton be or rendering him unconscious. You can also kill him. If you do that, the mansion in the present will again turn into a much nicer place, but this time it's empty, full of rats, and covered in notes stating the owner's desire to sell. Other than that, everything else mirrors what happens in the ending where Stilton goes mad. If the other examples of how time travel could affect A Crack in the Slab weren't impressive enough, the dramatic effect your choices can have on events outside the mansion should surely be enough. A lot of games have implemented time travel in one form or another, and some, like Titanfall 2's Effect and Cause, have been extraordinary in their own way, but I'm not sure I've played any that have taken the concept quite as far as Dishonored 2 does outside of the mission itself. And all I can really say is bravo to Arkane Studios. I'd imagine it was an incredibly tough mission to actually develop, and the way it hangs together is truly a sight to behold. At this point in the video, I feel comfortable saying that A Crack in the Slab is an absolutely extraordinary achievement. Some may quite rightfully make the claim that Dishonored 2's gameplay has been simplified in order to cater to a one-off mechanic, and they'd be absolutely right. The mission's gameplay is at its core not as engaging as the rest of the game once the initial impact of the time travel mechanic has worn off, but when it comes down to it, I'm more than happy to ignore that given what Arkane manages to achieve in other areas, that being to create a time travel experience so staggeringly interwoven with the mission's level design and characters. The amount of care put into creating interesting time-altering scenarios for you to take part in throughout the level's runtime is simply astounding, and the way events can change depending on the choices you make towards its conclusion are far beyond anything I think anyone could have reasonably expected the developer to implement. Dishonored 2 is a fantastic game from start to finish, and I cannot recommend it enough if you haven't managed to play it yet, and A Crack in the Slab is perhaps its most brilliant moment, the extraordinary cherry on top of an incredibly entertaining experience. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, boys, girls and assassins. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments, and perhaps even consider liking and subscribing if you want to show the channel a little extra love, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.